Yeah.
Good morning, fans, all two of you. It's a fine sunny morning, and myself and Pat are at your service for the next half hour at least. So, how could you start a week better than that? Pat, could you tell me that? Could they possibly
Not
start
at all.
better than that?
Jude, we're getting a fine bank holiday weather, aren't we?
Uh,
People, I noticed, in Donegal, uh, I was out yesterday, and it just stream upon stream of car, and I noticed about 75% of the registrations are in Northern Ireland.
uh,
Donegal is
oh, it's
definitely
a magnet for this kind of weather.
the magnet for Northerners,
Yeah.
without question.
Was there a
Yeah.
terrible case of was that 13-year-old girl that was knocked out? Was that Donegal or was that somewhere else?
No, I was down in Cork, as far as I remember.
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah.
were out and some sort of motor sport thing.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, a girl of 13 driving a little sort of, I don't know
Sort
what,
of buggy thing.
a rally buggy. That's ridiculous.
Uh,
That's no trouble.
God bless the family. I feel
Oh,
very,
yeah, how would you live with that? Wouldn't that be desperate?
yeah,
Anyway,
absolutely.
let's crack on, Pat, and have a look at some of the things that are disturbing the nation.
Uh,
You sent me a thing at the last minute there about a free Presbyterian minister, and I must say I closed my eyes and said a couple of prayers, and then I addressed what you'd sent me. I found myself laughing rather than weeping. Tell us the story, Pat.
I just came across the other morning. Reverend, I think it's as a David Daniel Henderson,
That's correct.
a Money Slaying Presbyterian Church, said after
County
the Pope
down.
died, in County Down, he says the Pope was without question the Antichrist, and he had sent 1 million Catholics to hell, and he had a go at the leaders of other uh, Protestant churches and King Charles for their wishing the Pope, the wishy-washy sentiments and following all the rest of it. But what I thought was the absolute arrogance of these sort of people and the bigotry. Like they're sort of saying our God is the one true God, and all you people. The arrogance of that, strikes me as unbelievable. That they
Well,
know they have got they're the chosen ones. They're the ones that are on the right path, and everybody else is wrong. When you think about that, like, by the way, they're supposed to be Christians as well.
see these Christians how they love one another. Uh, yeah, but I suppose, Pat, if you have the truth, if you believe you've got the truth and everybody else is
Yeah,
wrong, well, then you've got to speak out against these bad people. If the
yeah,
Pope's the Antichrist, you've got to tell people because they might think he wasn't the Antichrist. So you've got to tell them
yeah,
he is the Antichrist. He's
yeah,
in hell, of course, if he's Antichrist, and he sent millions of Catholics to hell.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but who give you?
that's freedom
Who
of
give you
speech.
the tablets of truth? How arrogant is it? One, like, I don't know. The Muslims could be right. The Christians could be right. The Catholics could be right. The Protestants could be right. The Jews could be. I haven't a clue. Who's on the right path. And I'm not going to. If you believe something, you're quite entitled. But I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I'm not invited to tell anybody they're wrong.
Well, the other thing, of course, is that what kind of God does this man believe in? You know,
Ah,
it really is a God of the Old Testament where there's the devil versus God. And the thing is to get on the right side with God and to, kick the devil to
but you
hell
know what I've thought?
and all his
Yeah, it's a
friends.
sort of like stuff. That sort of stuff. It belongs to almost another era.
I tell you, yeah,
And
it sounds
you know,
again Paisley, doesn't it? Way back.
yeah, yeah, and you think as well there'd be a wee bit of respect of what you thought of the Pope. You think it'd be a wee bit of sort of, what would you say, decorum of not, maybe that's the wrong word, but respect is another word. The man's died, and the Pope, no matter what you said, it was a good man. And
Uh,
you think somebody just would have the decency to just shut up.
well, you see, I suppose, well, there'll be two things. One is you might want to credit him with believing what he says. And then
Yeah,
secondly, whether or not he believes what he says, he must know that there is a core of people who will respond to that kind of nice, clear certainty. God on this side, the Antichrist on this side. And,
yeah,
anybody
yeah,
who wavers in between, who, expresses sympathy when the Pope died or anything like that, oh, clearly they're wrong.
yeah, yeah,
They're on the way to hell. And that's
yeah.
what'll, they'll
Yeah.
waken up in hell and they'll be sorry then.
Uh,
Oh,
I know. No, it reminded me of someone about nearly 50 years ago, Jude. The
uh,
type of stuff Paisley was coming out with, and I thought, Good God, the Free Presbyterian Church hasn't moved on much.
Well, you'd hope some of it has, but this particular guy certainly hasn't. Um, okay, a couple of other items here. The thing is, we keep coming back to the same thing. The same items dominate the world. This thing by the founding director, this guy Garage O'Queen, the founding director of the Global Legal Action Network, GLAN. And it brings
Mm,
together lawyers and investigators to challenge power actors behind death, destruction, and other abuses. And he has says that the counter-terrorism police. I'm understanding this as belonging to in terms of Britain, but the
mm,
counter-terrorism police haven't even responded to him in terms of his what he says about these people who are either perpetrating or enabling people to perpetrate genocide, famine, and war crimes. What it comes down to is this: that you
mm,
have I'd say, the most appalling event of our lives, maybe, well, certainly in the last 20, 30 years, where this group of people are being beaten to pieces with bombs and armaments and so on. Buildings leveled. I mean, the rubble is so thick in Gaza, you wouldn't get through it
yeah.
with a digger. And the world is getting caught up with kneecap. That essentially would summarize it, I think. What I'm worrying about is, you were saying, does this man believe it? This guy that believes about the Antichrist. Do these
Mm.
people believe that it's right that they should have focused on the words of Kneecap, getting so excited about it, and not focus on the terrible mayhem that's been waged? Uh,
That's you sort of say it's. I don't even at this stage. I sort of get tongue tied when I try to say we're getting led down sort of all sorts of off roads, and when the substantive thing is staring us on the face, British politicians and all the rest of it having a go at kneecap while still, while refusing, and have been given numerous opportunities to condemn what's happening in Gaza. Jude, I think it was Troca at the weekend issued a statement saying mothers in Gaza are now boiling grass to feed their children, because that's what's left. No food, water, or anything has been gone in for 2 months. And yet they kept saying, what was it, fuck Israel. Jude, I'm quite willing to say fuck Israel, because what they're doing right now is unbelievable.
Hmm.
And they're sort of saying we're the victims. Jude, they've been bombing people who cannot get away for about a year and a half now, is it? Or maybe even since October 2023. There's at least 53,000 dead. There's 110,000 wounded. Apparently, there are more amputees in Gaza than anywhere else in the world. The place, as you say, has been flattened. There's no 2.3. I keep repeating this because I think the enormity of it's unbelievable. 2.3 million people have not got water, food, electricity. And we
or
keep telling
medicine.
it that the Israelis are the victims. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Israel is defending itself. Jude,
Yeah.
go and explain that in
Well,
any
you
shape
know what
or
comes to
form.
mind, Pat, is Trump. Trump said one time, you remember, he said the only thing that'll stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. I think he was making the
Yeah,
case for putting guns in teachers' cupboards in every
uh,
classroom in America.
yeah,
But actually, while I disagree with him on that, you can see how Israel. You wonder what would stop Israel. Well, it'd only be either if the weapons that have been sent to them were cut off, or if the world community stood up to them and said, well, then they know the phrase, a coalition of the willing. How
yeah.
can uh, Starmer look in the mirror in the morning, or any of the European leaders, and say, I'm going to just conduct this day as I did yesterday, and do nothing about these people who are? I mean, it's just outrageous. Those that aren't killed are now being starved. That's the long and short of it. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's, I
But you, you,
honestly think
you,
now
you,
that
you,
that's the policy of Israel. I believe they want to
yeah,
exterminate them.
yeah, that's it. But Gary Lineker, of all people, made a great point. When he was doing an interview with that guy the other night, it was a very, very good interview, a couple of weeks back on BBC about him leaving Match Day and know about his political views.
Oh,
And he
aye.
says, why is it so controversial? What's the big issue about someone in Britain uh, criticizing a foreign country that's in war? Why is it almost a crime to criticize Israel? And there's no crime to criticize Russia. There's no crime to what's happening in Syria, and so on. But you're not allowed to criticize Israel. And the other thing as well, Jim, right? Go and tell me something. Why is Donald Trump not saying anything about Israel? Why is Keir Starmer not saying anything about Israel? Why is von der Leyen not saying anything about Israel? Why is your man Albanese, who was elected in Australia, not saying anything about it? What's the soul of this coalition of the absolute refusal to speak out and
I,
condemn Israel?
I think you said it yourself, Pat. It's the Jewish lobby is so strong that these people feel that they can't move. I mean, I don't know anything about the Jewish lobby or the Israeli lobby, but it must be one hell of an outfit because I thought that the likes of Starmer had the right to declare send troops or whatever wherever they wanted to, or if
Mm,
the Parliament agreed, and likewise with the US, or likewise with Australia, and so on, and the EU. Uh,
mm.
I just they seem to. It's an extreme thing to say, but it seems as if their hearts have been removed, and they just
Yeah,
don't give a shit.
yeah. Do you know why don't they stop? Why don't they call on Israel to stop? Why don't they say like you've done enough? This is inhuman. Do you
But
know when
Pat,
you see what's happening now, you can sort of go, like, I am lost into nearly faith in human nature. I'm going,
Pat, I know
this
you're not
here
a
is
man.
so disgusting.
I know you're not a man of violence, but if somebody was doing what Israel is doing on the
Yeah,
street outside your house, you wouldn't call on them to stop it. You'd go out and do what you could to bloody well brain them to make them stop
yeah,
it. And the
yeah.
same thing applies. You know, you hear about this crap about the coalition of the willing who will support
Mm,
Ukraine. And meanwhile, they're allowing Palestinians to die hand over fist. I don't understand. I do understand in a way. You begin to, you're sort of horrified by the depths to which human nature can sink.
mm,
Israel case, all that infliction of destruction, but also all the Western powers who,
mm.
they really know what's going on and they're not prepared to do anything. That's an appalling indictment of, or indictment, or whatever the word is, of
Yeah,
human nature that they would stand
uh,
by and allow this to happen.
yeah.
And
And Jude,
anybody who opens
let's
their
be
mouth like me
clear.
gets it in the mouth.
Yeah, let's be clear. They have no far a far higher level of what's going on than we do. They can see the destruction and all that. Now, by the way, to digress slightly, apparently I saw a thing on social media over the weekend. Apparently, there was a restaurant in I think it's Italy refused to serve Israelis the other day, and there was a big controversy on social media about its anti-Semitism. Like, Jude, well, I will have serious um, thing about serving Israelis these days as well. Now, by the way, not talking about Jews. I'm talking about Israelis because see if somebody comes out of Israel these days. Are the members of the IDF and stuff like that? Should I would have a real big problem with that.
Well, even they weren't in the IDF. I think I would refuse to serve them in that. I mean, it's their government. It's in their name that all of this is being
Yeah,
done. I
yeah,
think, Pat, the
yeah,
problem is that, and you just sort of in a way alluded to it there, that this blurred line between Israel and Jewish. Nobody wants
yeah.
to say anything about Israelis in case people would interpret it as saying stuff against Jews. And
Oh,
because of the Jews' history during the Second World War, that would be a horrible thing to do. I wonder, people do say there's a lot of Jewish people throughout the world and in Israel who really reject what Netanyahu is doing.
yeah, very much,
I,
Jude.
I wonder. I think it must be hard. If there was a comparison to be made, I think it might go to um, Irish Americans.
Yeah,
Irish Americans would tend to have a sort of a streak of republicanism and maybe anti-Britishness in them. And
yeah,
I have a feeling that most Jewish people, no matter where they are, would have some sympathy with Israel, and that's why they can do
yeah.
it. Do you think I'm right?
Jude, there's quite a lot, in fairness to quite a lot of opposition to Netanyahu, even in Israel.
But I think
And
that's
if you
because they
read some
won't.
of
That's because they want their relatives home. That's because they want
yeah, that's true. But and the other, but there's also, Jude, if you read quite a lot of stuff on social media, quite a lot of Jewish people saying not in my name, and so
Well, that's
on.
exactly what
So
it like.
there, yeah,
that very phrase.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more and more Jewish people
Uh-huh.
or Israelis, if they feel that way, coming out and saying,
Yeah.
"Not in my name," because how
Yeah.
could they stand by it?
Uh, but Judy, someone, it's there's no rational explanation that that Starmer, like Trump, he's bought and paid for by the APAC, but Starmer, his wife, of course, is Jewish. But the world leaders, von der Leyen, are saying Israel has a right to defend itself. Jesus, if what they're doing in Gaza is defending itself, God help us, dude. It really is sickening to an unbelievable degree,
Well, it's
and
very saddening that the
the
world.
hypocrisy is unbelievable. Sorry?
I'm going to say it's very saddening that the world, the Western world, essentially has turned its
Yeah.
back and allowed Israel to get on with it. Um,
Yeah.
Shocking.
Wait, just to digress again.
I
I see our friend, the Chinese
that
president.
is
I think he's in Russia today. I think there are a lot of. Um, uh, I think there's going to be a lot of turning away from America in the years to come.
well. Let's face it. There wasn't too many Chinese. China was never exactly a friend of the U.S. Uh,
No.
and maybe they're just sort of cementing the relationships with Putin. But I would think it'd be more interesting because we were talking about Chinese people or China the other day on this
Mm.
vlog or this podcast, and we were saying that you begin to think more positively about the Chinese. I would say
Yeah.
that see that little guy that's playing snooker at the moment.
Yeah.
I
And
would
he's
say
doing
he's
very
doing
well.
more for China's relationships with the world than any
Mm.
number of diplomats. Does he live in China? Does he?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But snooker apparently is massive in China now. You
Well,
know, if by the way, I see Donald Trump just when we're on, and that's sort of you see he's now saying any films that are made out American films, any films coming in, he's now going to have because he says too many American films are being made outside of Hollywood, and he's going to put 100% tariff on them. So in other words, he's going to tell people what films they can make and what films they can sort of watch. And by the way, I saw the guy from Harvard on the other day. Did you know, Jude, that he basically that Trump that his people wanted to see who they were Harvard would be employing, what their background was, and all that. It's direct interference.
oh,
Unbelievable stuff.
it's desperate. But I think that Harvard has uh, number one, it is clearly stated its opposition to what Trump is doing to them, and number two, Harvard is a very strong and
Yeah,
wealthy. I mean, it is the
yeah,
epitome of privilege. I think
yeah.
Trump will have a time of it bringing Harvard to its knees, or some of the other places. There's a huge.
They've got a 50 billion war chest for starters, Harvard,
Uh, uh,
and I'm sure that a lot of alumni who are very
e-
rich will be
exactly.
sort of saying, "Hey, we're your George Soros and people like that will be sort of weighing in and saying, here's another couple of billion."
I think it's Trump trying to flex his muscles and saying, I'm an anti-establishment person. And besides all these fancy dancy academics with their fine talk and their research and so on, so they don't know their arse from their elbow. I think that's the impression he wants to give. And
See,
I
I think
think,
someone. I think there's a lot of resentment. This is amateur psychology here, but Trump seems to dislike people who are intelligent. He seems to dislike, experts. He seems to, this sort of, it's almost like he's got an inferiority complex masked by a massive superiority complex.
well, actually, I think that this is part of the whole right-wing movement to win people because most people, let's face it, aren't experts in academia or
You
physics
know,
or all the different things, and that they feel that these experts are living high on the hog. And if you can prove that, I always thought it was bullshit. So I didn't understand. I thought it was bullshit. So isn't it great to see them being pulled down now? Trump's
uh,
the man who'll speak up. You can understand every word Trump says.
yeah.
He always speaks his.
Yeah, your man Robert Kennedy was on the other day, and he says he's going to, do this thing about autism. And then there's some other guy who's apparently no qualifications whatsoever. He and medical, he's going to do something else. I can't remember what it was, Jude. And both of them are basically, Jude, you sort of go, wait a minute, these guys have no background in science, and yet they're going to decide. a whole lot of things about the future of American medicine. And by the
Mm,
way, there was a guy on the other night saying measles, the first outbreak of measles, I think it's in Texas,
mm.
has been in something like, what is it, 30 years?
God, that's scary, you know. I mean, to elect
Yeah,
a guy like RFK in charge of the health is just sort of ridiculous. Okay,
yeah.
let's bring it a bit nearer home because it's just endless, endless the bloody things that are happening and how one feels about them in America or in Israel or in Gaza. Fine Gael's Shannon, spokeswoman on sport, has said that the rules, her name is Ivan Nichuልን. That sounds like my
Yeah.
name, actually. Is that Collins by any chance?
I like Collins,
I
yeah.
think that's because
She's a former,
Collins and
she's a
Irish.
former RT
And
sports
I would
presenter,
want
by the way.
to here solemnly disown this woman. She's not a part of my tribe. Anyway, she says that ruling on Skorts was
Sports.
infuriating for anyone trying to encourage women and girls back into sports. Okay, question, Pat. You ever hear the word Skorts before?
Sure,
Did
on
you?
last night, well, no, let me explain. I thought first time I ever heard it was last night on RT, and I thought the girl, the newsreader, said skirts with an upper class accent. I had never heard of skirts.
I never heard of them either. Well, everybody else seems to be, familiar with them.
No, Jude, no, I don't think everybody else, because my dear missus was saying, I said, what she say, skirts? She said, I don't know. There you go.
Well, apparently the Dublin and Kilkenny players had a protest. They wore shorts and then they walked off and got back into the regulation Skorts. Um,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I'm trying to think this out. Uh, aren't isn't the GA? It's the GA who makes the rules, right? So wouldn't it make sense that they should? I mean, what's wrong with Skorts? And why are they
No,
objecting
well,
to
Judy,
it?
no, Judy, ladies playing with skirts on them. It's basically skirts. That's
Ah,
what
but they're the
when
same bloody thing.
they're saying if but all
They're
right, Jude, I was not going into detail of it. I know. Do you wear knickers underneath them or something? And when you're playing, then and if you slide down, does your skirt go all up over the place and all the rest? Whereas if they were playing in shorts, there would be no issue.
well,
I agree with the women.
maybe.
Absolutely, totally.
Well, so
Dude, like the women should be entitled to wear whatever the hell they're wearing.
I
You
guess,
know,
I guess. Although you do
you
have to have some central group that'll make a decision that everybody should
know,
do this. Um,
that would be sensible, Dude, to wear shirts like
uh,
everybody else playing sports wears shirts.
But I mean, the
Tennis
little
players,
skirts that they have over them and whatever they have
yeah,
underneath them, I'm certain it's just not their knickers. It'd be like the inner part of a pair of shorts.
well, whatever. I'm not an
And
expert on this
they look
subject, but
very well at it in either case. But the question is, how much good would it do if you were in shorts? Uh, Simon Harris, that fine man, by the way, has said that
yeah,
forcing players to wear skirts is archaic. And somebody else said something. Oh, Fine Gael's Shannon spokesperson, Ivan Nichullin, said it was infuriating that anyone was trying to encourage them to be active in sports and then have this rule. Um,
yeah.
do you feel strongly about it, Pat? If you didn't know it
I don't
existed
feel
up to
strong.
now?
For I'm not a woman, but I can understand why. Jude, if I was a woman and they were telling me I had to wear this old-fashioned sort of stuff just
It's not.
because it was a
I don't
rule
think
in
so.
1903,
Uh,
like Jude, the world's changed, and it's
uh,
like Jude, what's the big idea? Like women soccer players wear them, women rugby players wear them, or whatever. Jeepers, wear shorts. And it's perfectly modest. It's perfectly safe. It's perfectly acceptable. So what's the big problem?
have you ever thought they were very brazen wearing the skirts they've been wearing for decades?
No, never
No,
occurred to me.
I never thought of them as being particularly, in flagrante delicto or whatever the
But
phrase is.
let's be honest, I don't watch camogie, so there's no point in me turning around saying I know anything about it. I'm
Well,
just saying
it's
if
sort of
women
like
want
hockey,
to wear
isn't
shorts,
it?
a bit like hockey, yeah.
Uh, and they wear the same sort of things. I don't give a monkeys myself, but I don't actually think. I think you need to think long and hard before you decide. The players are the ones that'll decide what they wear. I think you have to have some sort of governing body that'll say in this sport, this is the kind of rules we have. Otherwise, you'd be having, teams saying, "Oh no, we don't want to have an offside rule," or we want to abolish penalties, or we want a 12-man team rather than a
And
11-man team.
if the women come out and say we want to sort of wear bikinis or something, I could understand the Jesus Christ, dude. they wear sort of sensible shorts and t-shirts the same as everybody else playing sport strikes me as pretty reasonable.
It does all right. But Simon Harris weighing in. By the way, speaking of Simon Harris, did you see him in the Late Late Show?
Aye.
Did you? I didn't see him, but I saw a report today, and they were a bit caustic about him. They said he was a real snorer and he was on first thing. Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, like, he didn't say, in fairness, Michal Martin was very smooth, and Mary Lou McDonald was pretty good. Like Harris, I remember the guy from the Observer who came over and interviewed Martin McGuinness, and he got the usual, um, what would you say, just the program speech. Harris just repeated, the election slogans and didn't say anything new.
I dare I say it, although it's not. I don't mean as an insult to the late John Hume, but always was the talk about the single transferable speech.
Verbal speech.
The trouble with the trouble with Simon Harris in a way is that he speaks too fast. So you begin to
uh,
think this is something he's learned off, and he's rattling out,
uh,
and his mind isn't engaged with it really.
uh,
Now I could be wrong
uh,
on that, but I find him. People said when he was came to be Taoiseach or to lead Fine Gael, first of all, that, oh, geez, this will be a great fresh wind. The TikTok Taoiseach. I
uh,
never thought that. I always thought he looked, and we agreed on this. We said he looked like
yeah,
an awkward sixth former rather than a
yeah.
teacher.
I've always felt that.
Yeah,
There's something about. I keep saying this, but there's a certain gravitas somebody should have to be a leader of the country,
yeah, I
and he
agree.
just doesn't have it.
I
I don't know
hasn't.
what it is. Yeah,
Its posture isn't good either. Whereas Michael Martin's very erect.
yeah,
He looks sort of. It's not fair. Like I'm sure it's the guy's
uh,
metabolism. He looks sort of
yeah.
skinny and lanky, as I say, like a gangling
Well,
sixth
in fairness,
former.
I think he's
Whereas
some
if you
sort of
look
a
at
medical
Michal,
condition.
looks as
Yeah,
solid as a
uh,
rock. But anyway,
uh,
the point is they started leaping on the bandwagon there, and you've confirmed my fears. Well, confirmed my fears in one part, and you've raised fears in the other. You've confirmed my fears that it was given a sort of a standard transferable speech on the Late Late
uh,
Show, and you've aroused my concerns in that you watch the Late Late Show. Do you do this
yes, yes.
often? How many times, my son? How many times?
How many times you? Sometimes due to if it's I know someone due to I used to watch it regularly. Now I can sort of in and out, if you know what I mean.
Aye.
What do you call it? It hasn't been great this last while, but then hey, Patrick Kilty has improved immensely.
Oh,
I
I
have to give
agree
him
with
that.
that. I agree with that. I think he's living proof that you can take somebody who's seen as irreplaceable and replace
Uh,
them.
uh,
He grew into the role very quickly, and I wouldn't have
uh,
been a fan of his particularly, but I think he's doing a good job.
he's
Um,
doing a good job, definitely.
did you see that there was I stayed the one night that I watched it was there was an interview with Mary Lou alone for the first
Uh,
half hour or something.
uh,
Did you see that one?
yeah, yeah.
What
That
do you
was
think of that one?
the format. He's given all the political leaders that first
Uh,
segment. I think it's 15 minutes.
that's a good idea. I thought Mary Lou was pretty good. Um,
Yeah,
I'm afraid to say the next thing, but because I got into bother when I mentioned female politicians and their physique. I
uh,
think, well, of course, Mary Lou hasn't been well or wasn't well during the
uh,
summer. But she looks like somebody who could lose a few pounds or take more exercise, or how can I phrase it delicately? Do you think?
uh,
You're
what do you
afraid to
call it?
say, aren't you?
I'm,
You're
ref-
afraid to
I'm
say
ref-
anything in case they come after you.
Absolutely, because what do you call it? Um, uh, we said Harris looks too thin, and now we're saying Mary Lou's gone weight. Like
Well,
that's
a little bit of a swap. You
I,
could do a bit of
could
a
do I
swap.
could do with losing a few I could do with losing a few pounds myself. So I'm not
Well, I could do
nobody
with
should be
putting
talking.
I could do with putting a few on. And what's more,
Uh,
see my bald head. I don't like having a bald head. I really wish to God I had a big bushy head of hair. And you're losing your hair as well, but at least you have a beard
uh,
which sits.
uh,
I couldn't
uh,
grow. I could grow a beard, but it
uh,
would look awful. Anyway,
uh,
incidentally, no harm, but
uh,
Gabriel's a good man, and we're delighted to have him on from Ottawa. But I don't think he should wear that beard. What do you think?
you hadn't the nerve to tell him to his face
Ah,
anything
you're
wrong.
right. You're right. He might come over from Ottawa and give me a pasting. He looks like a big man. Okay. What do we see? Oh yeah. Apparently, this is the first line, and then they sort of roll back from it in a thing by who is it? That woman that writes very frequently and writes good stuff. in the Irish Times. She says, if I told you that you could book a last minute ticket from Dublin to New York for a fare of €15, you'd probably think I was mad. Welcome to transatlantic travel in 2025. Now, she rose back a bit from that and she winds up saying that actually the cost for a customer would be more like 400 €400. But she says that'll still be a bargain. And the reason is that apparently the tourist traffic to New York and to the States generally has fallen off seriously, at least
Yeah.
30%. Would you be attracted by those really rock bottom prices?
I'm not. I would no more travel to America right now than I would to some sort of Russian gulag on a very simple basis. Jude, I am told, and I don't think it's any sort of anecdotal anymore. I think it's fact. They are checking people's passports. Apparently you have to get if they want your password for your phone, you have to give it to them. They're checking such and such, and people are. Yeah, it was yeah. One of the professors, one of the Irish professors, he was going to a conference, and he said they held him for about 25 minutes. He says he was going to speak at a conference. And he said, I think, as far as I remember, he said it rattled them pretty badly about their attitude. And Jude, America has become unbelievable. There's a definite sort of Hitlerian tone to the whole place at the minute.
What you're
The
saying is you'd
crackdown
be
by the
what you're saying
yeah,
is
go
you'd
ahead.
be afraid that you might be sent down to El Salvador because of the things you said
Well,
here.
it's Jude, I am pretty certain. I doubt if you would get in, or I doubt if I would get in. There were so many turned on the plane because returned home because of comments they made about Trump. Like, Jude, it's unbelievable that this sort of uh, the land of free speech. You're kidding.
That's free. Yeah. Well, I'm in a bit of a pickle here in a sense. Not really, but sort of a pickle. We normally go over and see our son, who's married and living in New York, every year, and see him and his wife and his family. Um, and secondly, we've been invited to the wedding of a nephew of Maureen's, my wife's nephew, and they're
Mhm.
getting he's getting married to an American woman, and it's going to be in North Carolina. And they've sent us a
Mhm.
nice, fancy invite. And we're saying, well, we could kill two birds with one stone, but I'm not sure they want to go. And I'll
No,
tell you straight, Pat, I wouldn't. Maybe it's inflating. I used to say to people who say to me, "You need to watch yourself for that kind of thing," saying that in public. And I was saying, actually, I wouldn't waste a bullet on me. I'm not sure that I actually would be a good idea because Trump seems to have
no,
no problems with picking up anybody he feels like.
yeah. I think the gloves are off totally as regards to freedom of speech.
Yeah.
That it's become totally fascist. You know,
Well,
uh,
yeah. Don't forget this.
America.
Yeah, but don't
Go
forget
ahead.
this, the freedom of speech is limited here too. I mean, when I started talking about the physique of Simon Harris, fair enough, but to move to the other gender is that's dodgy
Yeah, I know,
ground wrong.
but that's only convention. You're not going to go into jail for it. And America, you could lose your freedom
Well,
over certain things.
I suppose it's that.
Yeah.
Okay, we've only 2 minutes left, but just a final one. Your man Nick Robinson, you know the guy on Radio 4 on BBC,
BBC,
he used to be
former
with
political
ITV, I
editor.
think. He has said that he's concerned about the quality of interviews now, and
Yeah.
he points to podcasts where people who are politicians are given a soft ride and allowed to room to expand on their views of the world. And he's essentially saying that the interviews aren't rigorous enough. Do you think?
Absolutely, Jude. Donald Trump, it's becoming increasingly clear in the Americans. He did a real interview with some guy from NSBC or what you call it,
Yeah.
and the guy actually asked him real questions, and Trump turned around in the middle of it and says, "You're not being nice to me." He's so used to obsequious, fawning, or whatever words you
Uh-huh.
want, a sycophancy,
Mm.
that this guy actually saying to him, "Wait a minute, no, you're wrong there, Mr.
Okay.
President." He's not used to that.
Quick question, Pat, because we really are running short of time. When you were a journalist, you'd have done interviews with people, would you? Right?
Yeah.
Would you have considered yourself to be a gentle interviewer, a medium tough interviewer, or a really hard interviewer?
No, Jude, I asked the questions that I wanted answered. And it didn't matter who it was. And I don't consider myself tough at all. But you'd see the American interviews; they're jokes.
Mm.
They're powder puff free spin for the politicians. They're not interviews at all.
I did for the BBC over the years. I'm sure I must have done dozens of interviews. And when I think back, uh, I definitely was very soft with people. I never remember an interview where I was attacking a person, but maybe they were doing a different type. They weren't political. The vast majority of them weren't
Yeah.
political at all, you know. Okay, Pat, that's it. Any good news? Anything to cheer our hearts this day?
No, just it's a bank holiday Monday, and I'm going to go out and sit in the sun for a wee while.
Ah, excellent, Pat. Good
Yeah.
decision. Don't mow your lawn. Let the insects
No,
take it.
no, I've already done that.
Ah, for God's sake. You let me down again. Okay, Pat. Good luck.
All the
Enjoy
best,
yourself.
Jude. Bye,
Bye.
bye.